Welcome back into KSL Sports and KSL News Radio. BYU football getting ready to host the Kansas Jayhawks, and it's a revenge spot for BYU. They faced Kansas last year in the Big 12 opener for the Cougars in Lawrence. Now they get to host KU in Provo. And to get an insider look at the Jayhawks, I'm joined now by Jon Kirby of JayhawksSlant.com, part of the Rivals Network. Jon, appreciate you hopping on board. It's pretty cool to think this is now round number 2 between these two teams.
Yeah, Mitch, I'm looking forward to it. I think this will be a really good game. And, yeah, I feel like BYU is my adopted team. I think I've watched them play 5 full games just, sitting around between KU games or on a bye week. It seems like they're the team I've seen more than KU.
It's been a wild season to see BYU have this success and get a little bit bigger spotlight than probably anyone, including myself, would have expected this year. And it's been a different season than I expected for Kansas, too. I thought the Jayhawks were going to be, a team looking to be in the mix to go to Arlington at this juncture of the season, but 3-6 start, but they seem like they're turning the corner, looking like the team we thought they could be coming into the year. What's changing for Kansas as of late, Jon?
Well, Mitch, I think it's the biggest thing's the offense, okay? And as you guys know, Jeff Grimes is the new offensive coordinator. I know probably people listening to this are very familiar with Jeff's past. And you've got Jalon Daniels, the quarterback, who really makes everything go. And when you look back at Jalon Daniels' history, his last full game that he played was last year against BYU. And their next game against Texas is when he came down with the injury and he missed the rest of the season. It lingered through the winter. He did not play in spring football, sat out the summer, and the first time he really got a chance to take snaps and throw the football was in fall camp. So, there was a theory, Mitch, that it's the old knocking off the rust was going on. And, at first you're like, God, he's just making some bad reads and he's doing this and he's doing that. But now that you're watching him and seeing what he started to do since about midway through the point of the season, maybe there is some truth to the fact that he's just kind of needed to work back into it. But he is now starting to look like the Jalon Daniels that we've seen him when he's healthy, and the offense is clicking. I mean, last week against Iowa State, who came in with the best statistical defense in the league, I mean, they just chewed Iowa State up. I mean, it's 530 yards and 45 points, and, I mean, they moved the ball at will. So, when that offense is going, I mean, I think they're a pretty scary matchup.
And when you talk about that offense, how much has it changed with Jeff Grimes now as the OC instead of Kotelnicki?
So I asked him about that. I asked him about that in fall camp. And I said, what do you do? Because, Mitch, what happened is when he came in, he returns Jalon Daniels, the top 2 running backs, the top 4 receivers, and like 3 or 4 of the top offensive linemen. Okay. And Kansas' offensive system was already in place. So Jeff Grimes said there have been stops where he went as an offensive coordinator that he came in and had to put his stamp on things. He said this was different. He said that everybody was returning. There's already a good system in place. So he kind of learned what they knew, and he hasn't really changed a lot. They still do the option and quarterback design run plays, and they get the tight end involved, and they still take deep shots. I mean, it's starting to look like the offenses that Kansas has run over the last couple years.
Yeah, I remember at Big 12 Media Day talking with Coach Leipold, and he noted that Kotelnicki and Grimes would always have off-season conversations, and when Kotelnicki left for Penn State, Leipold immediately knew he wanted to go to Grimes because they had that similar kind of mindset, and it sounds like that's continued. Now they're turning the corner offensively. I want to ask you, too, Jon, about Devin Neal. Where does he rank, in your opinion, among all-time great Kansas football players?
Well, he's got to be near the top. Mitch, we were just talking about this yesterday that, he broke the Kansas all-time rushing record last week. A 14-yard carry early in the game set the record. And we were talking about how, that record likely may never be broken because when you look at things now, number one, guys that good don't stay 4 years, right? They either go to the NFL or they go to the portal, or a real good running back came from the portal. So the days of a guy getting all those carries for 4 years, I mean, those are kind of dwindling. But he is just Mitch, I got to know Devin. He's a local kid. He's from Lawrence, right down the street from KU, and I got to know him through recruiting. I think that one of the coolest things with him is he's a really good football player, but he's even a better person. I mean, he's great off the field, great on the field. So he's really represented KU well. But in terms of as a football player, I mean, he's got to be up near the top.
How would you describe the Kansas defense right now?
That's a good question. Well, they play a 4-down front. They will use they've really started to use a lot of nickels, changing up what they call their Cinco package. They move Marvin Grant, who's a transfer from Purdue. They bring him in as like an extra linebacker. The Kansas defense has played well in spurts, and then it's not played well in spurts. So last week against Iowa State, I think there was like 5 drives in the part where they built the lead. They got stops or forced Iowa State to field goals. The problem is they just haven't been able to put all that together and do like 3/4 of good defense. So it kind of goes in spurts, but they've got the ability to do it. They've lacked some pass rush, but they got after Iowa State pretty good last week. So I think here over the last 3 or 4 games, the defensive coordinator, Brian Borland, has started to do some different things with blitzing. In the past, it was just one linebacker. But lately, he started to blitz his safeties. He started to blitz his corners. And he's doing some different things. And it has caused some new pressure points for the defense where they've gotten in the backfield.
Jon, I'm curious, with Kansas being at 3-6 and needing to win out to the postseason, if they don't win out and get to a bowl, could there be some changes, or do you feel like this recent success, and I'm not talking about Leipold, but just like this, do you think he revamps maybe his staff potentially if they don't win out and get to the postseason, considering the high expectations this year?
He is such a detailed, organized guy. I just think that he's somebody that's always looking at what to do to get better, right? And I mean, whether that's going through and saying, hey, listen, if we button this up, I don't think it's coaching. Or maybe he says, hey, we need a new voice here, some fresh ideas in a certain position or a certain area. He will certainly make changes. Now, when you look back at his history, okay, he brought a lot of guys with him from Buffalo. And when he went from Wisconsin Whitewater to Buffalo, he brought a lot of those guys with him too. So he's been pretty loyal to his staff. But the one thing I've learned as I've gotten to know Lance, he is a competitive guy. I mean, to the bone. So, I mean, if there's changes that have to be made, he'll do it, Mitch, and he won't think twice about it.
How much do you enjoy covering Coach Leipold? He seems like a really good guy.
Yeah, well, I like him because I think he's just straight to the point. Yeah. What you see is what you get. He'll come in every now and then, give you a little good mood, a little smile, but he's pretty businesslike. And I like a guy where you cover him, you know where you stand with him, and you know that what you're getting from him is straight up, and that's how he is.
That's pretty cool. Talking with Jon Kirby here. Last couple things here for you, Jon. Again, you can follow his work at jayhawkslant.com on the Rivals Network. How do you see this game playing out? Or maybe actually, let me ask you, are there any concerns from the Kansas side regarding the late-night kick, the potential inclement weather? Any concerns on kind of the logistics side of this game?
Well, sure. I mean, like I said, I've watched some BYU games this year, and boy, I'll tell you, I don't know, when it comes down to it, Mitch, they might have the best crowd in the Big 12. I mean, I know KU went into a pretty tough environment, had to play in Manhattan, a game a couple weeks ago that they probably should have won, and that's always going to be a tough environment because they get up for KU. But boy, I'll tell you, you watch BYU and that crowd on those night kickoffs, and it looks pretty electric. So that's that night kick, having to go out there, sit around all day waiting for the kick. You've always heard coaches say they'd rather just go on the road and get the game going at 11 a.m. and get it off. So, that's a concern. And, I was looking at the schedule with BYU's schedule, and I really didn't realize this till a couple days ago. They played, Oklahoma State? Then they had a bye. Then they went on the road. So they haven't almost played at home in a month. Yeah. So the way I look at it is, hey, those students and that crowd, they're going to be ready for that game. So this is going to be a hard environment for KU. But, Mitch, I'm telling you right now, Kansas is starting to play like the team that everybody thought they were going to be before the season. A week before it kicked off, ESPN had KU as the highest percentage to be in the college football playoff in the Big 12. They're starting to look like that team that people thought it would be in the preseason.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff, John, and I appreciate you taking the time to hop on. I had Kansas in my number one preseason Big 12 bout. This team's got tons of talent, so I've been telling people around here this BYU-Kansas game is going to be quite the game, and I can't wait to see it. Follow John at Jayhawks Slant on X, jayhawkslant.com, part of the Rivals Network. Thanks for the time, John.
Hey, Mitch, thank you very much. Anytime.
That's Jon Kirby here on KSL News Radio and KSLSports.com.